And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Alison Ward Mentor, author and mental health advocate, who during her own near-death experience saw her welcoming committee on the other side. Alison, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you.
Alison, let's start on the day you died and go from there.
So the day I died started off as a typical summer's day, July 5th, 1994. I was getting ready to cook tea, and I started, dinner. I don't know what you're saying, UK. In the US, we tea. I was cooking spaghetti bolognese for my 2-year-old son and myself. A little bit of a backstory. I'd split up from my son's father quite a few months before, and he had been not graciously accepting the fact that I didn't want to be with him. And he'd also been messing about with arrangements for seeing a son and being the father that he said he wanted to be. So it was a bit of a challenging time. It was 5:15 on a Tuesday. My mum hates Tuesdays now. And I was cooking spaghetti bolognese. I was relieved because I knew that Graham, this person who I used to have a relationship, was not in my area. He was out of area, working in a different part of the UK. I knew that because he told me. So I felt a little bit relieved that he wasn't in my area. I'd also started seeing a lovely man 6 weeks previous who, on this particular day, the 5th of July, 1994, was setting off on a 6-week trip on his motorbike, with a friend around Europe, something that had been planned way before he met me. And I was excited for him, and I wanted him to go and have a great time. And, you know, if we still felt the same when he got back, then we would carry on seeing each other. So it was a typical day, really, taking my son to nursery, being to work, cooking some food. And at 5:15, there was a knock on the door. And as I opened the door, my son's father, Graham, was standing there. So first of all, I was trying to ascertain whether he'd been drinking, because he did drink a lot, whether he'd been drinking, whether he looked clean and well kept, which are typically the signs if someone's been over drinking and not looking after themselves. But he seems fine. But he shouldn't have been there. Should have been hundreds of miles away in a different part of the UK. But he very calmly said, "I've come to talk to you about Sam." And I thought, hallelujah, he's come round. He's going to be the father that he said he'd be. So I invited him into my little home. And we walked through the small hall into the lounge living room area. And my son was really excited to see him because he'd not seen him in about 2 weeks. So he ran up to him, but Graham sort of pushed him away. And I remember then thinking, well, that's a strange thing to do. He's not seen him for a couple of weeks. And then Graham turned towards me and said, "Today's the day you're going to die. I've planned it all." And with that, he pulled a knife out of his back pocket, headbutted me twice, pushed me into a corner of the room where he straddled me and started stabbing at my chest. While this was going on, my son, who was only 2.5, just 2 years, 7 months, was trying everything he could do to distract him, which I found in reflection quite amazing for such a young person to have that wherewithal to try and save his mom. So he tried to jump on his back as he was stabbing at me. He brought my glasses to me that I used for driving or watching the TV, and he even bought his little dressing gown belt that used to sit and rub in the corner of his eye. All these things that he tried to do to distract him. He even went to the toilet in his potty to try and distract Graham from what he was doing. As you can imagine, it was horrific. It was, how can I describe it? It was painful on every level you can imagine. And then I had a realization that I wasn't watching a horror film. I was in the horror film. We were in this horror film. I couldn't see how I could escape. At the time, I was tiny. I was a tiny little build at the time. I'm much heavier now, being older. 29 years ago this was, but I was tiny. And he was much stronger than me and taller than me and had more weight behind him than me. So he was just, I was like a rag doll to him, really. So I couldn't see how I could escape this situation. It's incredible as well when something like that happens. Your mind is working so fast. It's looking for ways to escape. It's looking for ways to talk yourself out of the situation that you're in, which I tried and it didn't work. And then I pulled my leg up to my chest to protect my chest. And that's where I got the main wound in my leg. And I was starting to get very weak. Obviously, blood was gushing out and I started to get very weak. And I just felt myself leave my body, and I liken it to a cork leaving a bottle of wine, that pop noise. So I literally felt myself leave my body through the top of my head. And as I left my body, I was moving towards this light that was brighter than sunshine. It was light that you could look at and it wouldn't hurt your eyes. And I was moving at speed because my hair was being pushed, swept back, and I had very short hair at the time, and I could feel the hair being pushed, swept back. But what was also interesting at the time, as I was moving towards this light, or the light was moving towards me, I could see black and white photographs either side of me, just changing constantly. And even though I was moving towards this light, I remember thinking, oh, I've not seen him for a while. I wonder what's happened to her. There were photographs, I presume, in reflection, of everyone I've ever met. So there are, I don't know how many, but many, many, many black and white photographs, just like on a Polaroid film that you get, those, those brown Polaroid films. And I could hear the noise of them switching between different photographs. Then that stopped, and as I was moving further in towards this light, all my pain disappeared. I had no fears and I had no worries. I couldn't feel the heat of the knife and the coolness of the blood. I couldn't feel any terror that I was feeling. I had absolute calmness, and I was just completely enveloped, surrounded, bathed in love and the purest, purest love. I often liken it to the first time I held both of my sons, but even stronger than that, which I don't want to take away. It was wonderful when I held both of my sons, but this love was so much stronger. I don't know how else to describe it. It's hard to put it into words. So all my pain disappeared. And as I was moving further towards this light, I could see a triangle of people. So the point of the triangle was towards me, a triangle of people like that. So there was one person there, two people behind him, three behind, then four, and about five. So 5, 9, 11, 12. About 15 people were waiting for me. But at the very front of the triangle was my granddad on my mum's side, who was my favourite grandparent. And my son was named after him. His name was William Samuel, and we called him Sam. And my son Sam was named after Granddad Sam. And he looked so well. He died when he was 76, but he looked younger and he looked well, and he had no stress in his face. And I could not wait to touch him. I was so close to touching him and being close enough to hug him. And then just as I was about to enter that space to hug him and to be with him, and all these other people who I knew, but I didn't know. So I knew they were my family members, but I knew I hadn't met them, but I knew them, as odd as that sounds. And then just as I was about to get close to my granddad, where I could have a hug, I heard a very old-fashioned voice with a Birmingham accent, which is where I'm from originally in the UK. And it said, "It's not time to go yet, duck." And with that, I was back in my body, literally. back in my body. The place was a bloody mess. I was a bloody mess. Sam was over in the corner, very quiet, very calm. And I just calmly looked at my attacker and I said to him, what would your mom do if she saw you doing this to me and Sam? His mom had passed a while before. I can't remember now exactly how long. And with that, he let out this animal type noise, moved back very slightly, and God knows how. The police don't understand how I did this, because I had a gaping hole in my leg. I somehow managed to jump over him, run out of my little house, and there's a shop on the corner, ran to the shop asking for help, asking to call police. Unfortunately, and this is what I struggled with for many years, because I was in that fight or flight mode, I'd left Sam in the house. If I would have turned and grabbed Sam, I'm sure we both wouldn't be here now, but I didn't. I was in that fight or flight and I was out the house. And he very nearly got me because he was pulling at my hair and we could see chunks of my hair in the hallway. And it was only a little house. He was then found by the police about half an hour, 45 minutes later, maybe even longer. The police found him in a car that had the pipe attached, and he was gassing himself, and he had Sam on his lap and he wouldn't let go of Sam. So the police smashed the window, grabbed Sam out because his back was just about arching, which means he was just about to OD on carbon monoxide. So they smashed the window, took Sam out, arrested Graham. Sam went to one hospital, I went to another, Graham was arrested. So that was a near-death experience. What was very interesting, that whole situation changed my life forever, as you can imagine. I couldn't go back to live in that house. I wasn't mentally well enough to look after my son. We both were diagnosed with PTSD. And I lost my job. I lost a certain amount of friends because I didn't know who I could trust. There was just a couple of friends that I felt I could trust. And that started me on a journey to mental wellness. And that's why I'm so passionate about mental wellness. And that's what I do for a living, have done for the last 25 years. What I noticed and what I discovered when I started, well, actually at the hospital, Mum and Dad came to see me at the hospital. And when Mum saw me, I said, Mum, I saw Grandad, I saw Grandad, I saw Grandad. And she wasn't that interested in that at the time, but she asked me later about it. And I said, he's really well, he looks fantastic. I saw Grandad, I saw Grandad. So that was wonderful. But something changed. How can I even put this into words? I had a friend who's since passed. She died quite a while ago, 15 years ago. She was the same age as me. I was 29 at the time. And she said to me, she said, you were a wimp back then, but after that happened, you became a warrior woman. But you know what? She's right, because I trusted everybody. If someone said black was white, I believed them. I was so naive and so gullible, but probably because I was very trusting and I expected people to be like me and kind, and I sadly realised that they weren't. So that was a real shock. It's what I call the awakening, because it woke me up to a whole load of things about people and life and living and dying. But on my journey to getting well and returning to good mental health, the help back then wasn't very good. And the support I got from the whole judicial system at the time wasn't that good. I'm hoping it's improved, but I don't think it has improved that much. I felt very much in prison because before he went to prison 13 months later, he was allowed out on bail and he was still frequenting his old pubs and his friends, whereas I was petrified of seeing him again because I felt he was going to finish us off. So I was sort of imprisoned in a safe house for a while. So it sort of stopped our lives, if you like, for quite a while. But what I did notice was I was very different. And I had this wisdom and this sense of knowing, and my intuition was incredibly strong. And I would say things, I used to say things like this before, but it was definitely stronger afterwards. I'd say things like, oh, have you checked your tyres on your car? There might be a flat tyre. Or I would know to drive a different route one day and I wouldn't know why. But then I'd find out later there might have been an accident on that route. And sort of it sort of became stronger. And how it became stronger was because the health back then was so limited, I would wake up in the morning and I'd force myself to look at myself in the mirror because I didn't recognise who I was, because my lips had changed shape, because when he headbutted me, my lips split in two. So my whole lips changed shape. I just didn't look like facially, but also my expression did not look like me at all. And if I hadn't got any photos of before to compare, but you wouldn't even recognise me from the person that was then. You would think I was someone totally different. It's very bizarre. So I found it really hard to come to terms with this person looking back at me. But really interestingly, when I started to do this, I did it. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I did start accepting the new version of me. Who knows? But I would hear a voice clear as anything to tell me to do certain things. But it was a kind voice. And I wasn't schizophrenic. So I did get this checked out because I was petrified of having a mental illness. It would say, right, say 5 things that you're grateful for. Then I want you to do that before you go to bed. And then when you wake up in the morning, before you get up, say 5 new things to be grateful for, and do that every day. So it was like I was assigned my own manual to get myself well. And I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose, so I might as well do it. So that's exactly what I'll do. I'd go to bed and I'd say 5 new things to be grateful for. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd say 5 new things to be grateful for. And one day I'd woken up, and for the first day in I don't know how long, as I moved from the bed to the bathroom, I felt as if someone had turned a light on inside me, and that light became hope. Now, I have to say to you, Jeff, that all hope and peace of mind, God, this makes me a bit emotional, but all hope and peace of mind left me because my whole world was shaken up by, why would a man who you once loved do this to you, let alone their own son? I didn't understand it. I didn't know who to trust. Everything that I'd been taught had been smashed in smithereens. So when I got up this one day and I felt hope returned, this light bulb turn on, I started continuing to look in the mirror every day and hear what my next stage would be. And there were a series of little messages. Today I want you to go outside. And I say, no, I don't want to go outside and just walk for 5 minutes. Right, tomorrow walk for 10 minutes. Today I want you to drink more water. Okay. Today I want you to eat light and be full of light. Okay. Today I want you to sit in silence and really be in that silence and in that presence of silence. So I noticed I started to feel calmer, and that I wasn't getting so many nightmares, and that I wasn't getting so many flashbacks, until my team, as I call them, decided to mash things up a little bit. And I can't remember quite what had happened, but I remember having a very, very bad day. Even doing all this positivity, one day, and this happens with PTSD. It's a head, F-U-C-K. That's how I describe it. You never know how your head is going to present to you. You'll have massive highs, and then you'll be so low that you can hardly get out of bed, can't get off the floor. You're in that pit of darkness and you can't scrape your way out. And I happened to have a day like that. And at the time, I was with my now husband, that man who went off for 6 weeks. We were together and we'd had a son. But quite a passage of time had passed. The healing had taken a long time, as you can imagine. But I just felt so low, and I just thought I must be such a burden. And I told myself, right, this is my last day. I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna find a way of killing myself. And then I felt such a weak person because I couldn't decide how to do it, and I didn't have the guts to do it. And I went to bed that night thinking, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Whatever I'm going to do, I'll get some tablets. I'll do something, but I'm going to do it tomorrow. I was determined to do it because I thought my husband would be better off without me. The kids would be better off without me. He'd meet someone else and she'll be their mom, and everyone would be better off without me, because when something happens like that, your self-worth is smashed to smithereens. So you just feel like a nothing. You just feel worthless, useless. So I didn't realise my importance at that time. And I went to bed that night and I woke up having a flashback and a nightmare at the same time. Now, what would happen in our household would be my husband would wake up, he'd calm me down, but then because I was noisy with my night terrors and flashbacks, I would wake up Sam, who would then wake up having flashbacks and nightmares, and then I'd get up and calm him down, and this went on for years. But this night, my husband didn't wake up. So this part of the flashback carried on to a point that I really didn't want to see and that I'd blocked out. And it was horrendous. And just at the point of almost no return, if you like, I saw this beautiful being kneel next to me on my bed. She looked like a human. There weren't wings. I call her my angel because she looked angelic. She had this, she had white blonde hair that was so glossy, and she had the purest of skin that didn't have lines in or stresses. It just had no marks in it. It was just the best Botox ever, I would think it was. And she had this light emanating from behind her skin and her eyes. She had these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful blue eyes. And I was looking into her eyes and I was just lapping up this love. And that love was the same love that I had in that light. And all this pain was just disappearing from me. And at the same time, she stroked my arm with the gentlest of strokes. And she just said, "You are safe. It will never happen to you again. You are safe. You are here to do great things. It will never happen to you again." I was just lapping it up. This was like the biggest feast, I could have ever had. I was just lapping it up, and my heart was just being like soothed and healed from this. My husband then woke up and heard her talking to me. He didn't see her, and he said, "What the bleep is going on? What the bleep is going on?" Interestingly, there was some other voices we both could hear that weren't pleasant. "Kill yourself, you horrible, dark, nasty voices." But they were getting quieter as we both heard my angel, as we call her. As we heard her voice, her soothing voice, more and more, those other voices got lower and lower and quieter and quieter. My husband got up, went to the toilet, thinking he'd just woken up and had a funny dream, came back, and he said, "What on earth is going on, Al? What on earth is going on?" And I said, "You know what? It's okay. Everything's okay." And she'd gone by then. My husband got into bed, and we just turned off the light, went to sleep as if it was the most natural thing on earth. I never had another suicidal thought. I can feel her with me now, actually. She's with me in the work that I do. She guides me. She gives me love and comfort. So one of the most beautiful things that's happened after coming out of that beautiful gift in an ugly box, as I call it, one of the most beautiful things happened. That no matter what happens in life, I know I'm not alone. And you can be surrounded by people who love you and think the world of you, and I am. I'm so blessed with people in my life. I've got good marriage, I've got a beautiful sister and friends. But sometimes you feel lonely. But I don't, because I know I've got this welcoming committee for me that has now, a few people have been added to it. I lost my dad last year and my father-in-law. But also I've got Sarah, who I like to call her my guardian angel, who is very much with me, and I feel her energy and her love and her presence many, many times. So from a very dark, that felt exhausting, excuse that breath, but from that very, very dark place and dark event, something wonderful has come from it. So from that point, and for the last 25 years, I remember saying to my husband, I want to be the person that I needed at the time when I was going through my trauma. So I've spent my time not talking necessarily about abuse. Anyone who's going through a life challenge, it might be loss of some sort or upset or challenge at work. So that's what I've done for the last 25 years, through one-to-ones, through doing a reading for someone or guidance for someone, because obviously I use my intuition for that. Or writing my books. That's why I was told, I should say, to write those books. Yeah, and that's it.
Alison, thank you for sharing your life with us. If we go back to the point when you told Graham, what would your mother think about you? Did you tell him that because you had just been on the other side and you had that experience with your granddad and you thought, okay, maybe she's there on the other side watching? Or was it just something you came up with?
Do you know what, Jeff? It wasn't even a thought. I was so calm. So this is what I realised upon reflection. So I reflect a lot. I was calm. What did I have to lose? If I was going to die, I was going to a fantastic place anyway. I had no pain there. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. But I didn't think about saying those words. Those words just came out very, very calmly and very eloquently. And clearly they triggered him because he let out this noise and moved back. So maybe those words were channeled, because I didn't think of those words for them to come out of my mouth. They just came out of my mouth. That's what saved us.
When you were flying through the tunnel and you saw the black and white photographs, to me it's some sort of life review. Did memories actually come up, or was it just curiosity about these people?
Curiosity about these people. And because they were moving so quickly, it was literally a case of, oh, yeah, that's so-and-so. Oh, I remember you. I worked with you. It was light-hearted. It wasn't serious. It was all, oh, yeah, recognition of someone I'd met, whether it was briefly or more involved. And I'd forgotten some people until I'd seen the pictures.
You call her Sarah. Did she tell you that's her name?
Afterwards, she told me her name was Sarah, because I started to naturally meditate because I wanted to have more of that feeling where I left my body. So when I meditate, I can have that feeling back again. So I asked what was her name, and it's really interesting that her name's Sarah, because every Sarah I've met since I really do like. I don't think I've met one Sarah that I haven't liked, and I just find that quite amusing. But yeah, she said clearly her name was Sarah.
When you hear her voice, is it like in a completely different person, or is it like your own voice, like when we think?
No, that's a really good question. It is a slightly different voice. It's a very gentle, soothing. I wish I could. I wish I could. I can't sort of take. You know, I can't do her voice for you, but it's very slow. It's very soothing. It feels like liquid words. So you want to listen. You want to engage when she says something. And she sort of introduced me a lot, if you like, to the angelic realms, which I'm really interested in. And having that support.
How did she do that?
She just would talk to me about the different. So in meditation, she would literally talk to me about different angels, but also my husband says I do more work when I'm asleep than I do when I'm awake. When I'm sleeping, I have a lot of engagement when I'm sleeping. I do lots of. This sounds really strange, but I do lots of time traveling. I do. I've been to different parts of America and Australia, and I've seen help children and people who've been in pain. I have all dreams about doing stuff like this, and have done for many years. I know it sounds really weird, but I am a very grounded person. But I do have very colourful. It's like when I go to sleep, it's like I'm in a film.
It's not weird for my audience. We talk about this all the time. But
Yes.
it sounds like perhaps you are astral traveling during your dreams.
Yes, I believe that's exactly what it is. And sometimes when I come back, I feel exhausted the next day. I feel when I've done a lot of traveling, um, and I've gone and met different beings and different people, I'll come back and I'll feel a certain way, and I will have to take a rest in the day. I'll have to make sure that I have an extra hour, because physically I'll be quite tired.
You mentioned that she's even with you now. Do you
Yeah,
s-
she's here.
do you hear her voice even like on a
No,
daily
she's
basis?
it I can feel her hand on my shoulder here. Wouldn't it be wonderful if one of the viewers could see her? But she's hearing me now and she's got her hand on my shoulder. She's telling me that she's proud of me.
Do we all have guardian angels?
Absolutely, 100%. Yes, we do. Sometimes more than one. Very common too. Um, for example, Sarah is my guardian angel. I know I've also got that welcoming committee, but I feel very close to Archangel Gabriel. And I remember playing with Archangel Gabriel when I was a child. So before all this happened, in fact, I was quite naughty as a little girl because I was one of these weird children. I remember seeing fairies, or in my mind, remembering I was seeing fairies. And I used to take my mum's buying gold chains and wrap them in newspaper and leave them for fairies. I only told my mum about this a few years ago. So she'd ask where all because my mum loved jewellery and my dad would always buy her nice gold change, but I used to give them to the fairies.
Is it possible that you had some other experience, some other mini NDE or something that gave you the ability to see fairies?
From as long as I can remember, I remember seeing colours around people. I remember being able to get from the bottom of the stairs to the top of the stairs without walking up them. I remember astrally travel. I used to compete with my older sister. So we'd share a bedroom together. And she'd astrally travel first. Then I'd travel. We would compete to see who could go the furthest. And I remember the ones actually leave the very first time we left the room and the house. And I'd see this silver cord that was attached to me that pulled us back in, if you like. But I would go a bit further than her, or she'd go further than me. And I remember doing that from as long as I've lost a lot of my memory because of what happened to me. It affects some of my long-term memory. So I don't remember a lot like from childhood, but those sort of things I remember very well, very, very well. I had a lovely experience a few years ago, another weird experience. I love that word weird. I was doing a workshop and someone was asking about orbs, and I was saying how much I love orbs. I love seeing orbs. And when I was pregnant with my second son, I was still very much with PTSD. We were carrying twins, but we lost the one of the twins, so just the one survived. And I named him David. I was at peace with that because to me, he wasn't meant to be born. That's how I dealt with him. But I always saw him as a blue orb. And he always told me in the same way that my Sarah talks to me, he will talk to me, but from this way, and that he is a blue orb. And at this workshop, I had a deaf woman who used to be a client of mine, and she would sign to music. So I said to her, "Would you do some sign to music in the break?" And she said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So I can't remember what song we chose, but she'd put the song in her CD player the night before. And when it came to the break, she pressed play. And the song that she put in the CD player wasn't the one that we'd chosen, but what song it was Michael Jackson's "You're Not Alone," which whenever I used to hear, that reminded me of my son David, who wasn't born, and she hadn't put that in the CD. So while she was signing to this, you could see her looking at me to say, "What on earth's going on? That isn't the song that I put in there." I could see a blue orb, and quite a few people in the workshop that I was holding that day could see this blue orb. And I just thought that was just wonderful because that was lovely, not just confirmation, but validation. So, yeah, lots of strange things.
You've seen orbs. A lot of my near-death experiencers also see UFOs. Do you see
Yes,
them?
yes. Um, I'm a little bit wary about saying this because I don't want people to come at me, but yes, I first saw my first one when I was driving my very first car I'll tell you when it was, 64, in 1986. I was driving along a country road with my friend Gail, who passed 18 years ago, listening to Trent D'Arby.
Mm-hmm. I remember him.
genuinely. We were listening to Terence driving down this country lane, and at the time, you probably don't remember this, but there was an American show called Soap on the TV. Do you ever remember that?
What was it called?
Soap.
Oh,
I'm sure
Soap.
it was.
Yeah, it was an old
Yeah,
comedy show.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
we're
Brilliant. We
probably,
love Soap.
I mean, we're about the same age, I'm
Oh,
guessing.
great.
So yeah,
Okay.
I know that.
Lovely.
I
So
remember that
you know.
show.
So at that time on Soap, someone had been abducted by aliens. I can't remember the character's name. I don't know if you do. Yeah.
I didn't watch the show very much, so
Oh,
I
we
don't
loved it.
recall
Oh,
that.
we loved it. So I was driving along in my little yellow Metro with my friend Gail. We had the windows down. It was a day like today. It was really sunny, and we were happy. We was driving along, singing along, and then I saw this massive UFO, and I just went, "What the?" Didn't slam on my brakes, but my car just stopped. So I put my handbrake, put my gear into neutral, and Gail, my friend Gail was in awe. She was saying, "Oh, that's so cool." And I was saying, "I want to get home. I don't want to be sucked up by an alien." So I thought I was going to sucked up. God. And I was putting the car into gear and it just wouldn't go. It just wouldn't go. And the alien was hovering and then it just went, and it went. And the car just went forward because I'd had my car revving up and off we went. So that's the first time I saw one. Oh, oh, I don't know if I should say this. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. Just won't tell my kids. I'm telling you. Not long after my second son was born, my husband was on nights and I was breastfeeding. He was like weeks old. So you know what it's like when you've got a newborn. You're in and out, you're in and out. And I was breastfeeding him and just the lamp was on. The room was dark. And then the room suddenly lit up. And as it lit up, I knew that behind my curtains there was light, and yet it was in the middle of the night. And I was really scared. I think when you've gone through trauma, you get scared very easily. And I'm a bit of a wimp like that. Was really so. I put the baby down on the bed, put the pillows either side of him so he wouldn't roll. Opened the curtains. As I saw the curtains, I swear on my life, this is true. There were three little aliens, like cream-coloured skin aliens, just bobbing. It looked like mommy, daddy's child, just bobbing there. And I just shut the curtains, got into bed, and I was just frozen in fear for the rest of the night. I didn't tell my husband because I thought that all these crazy things that happened, I didn't want to be locked up and my kids taken off me. But I phoned Gail the next day and she was so cool. She said, "Alison, they're just coming to check up on you and James. It's obvious that James is an alien." But funny enough, my older son would often call James an alien or tomato head because he had a very flat head at the back. So that was another experience. But yeah, I've seen them over here where we live. We live in countryside, and I've seen them at the back in the back garden.
Well, at least your husband had heard Sarah. So, if you had mentioned to it, he wouldn't think you're crazy because he'd already witnessed it.
Right. I am so grounded and so practical and earthy. I think, but I haven't told many people that over the years because of different things. But then also I have had a situation with Jesus as well, which was just wonderful. So this took me on a path of the healing aspects because obviously I was self-healing through given all this guidance and practical steps to take that definitely do work. And I write about them in my second book, Bringing You Back to You, because it's like a very easy manual to follow. So I learned about when I was a child, I would be able to suck people's pain out with my hand, but I didn't then know what to do with the hand because it was in my hand. So I'd shake it. So then when my first job after starting to get well was working in a hospice as volunteers. I would help the volunteers manager, so a coordinator. So I'd help recruit volunteers, train them. But the philosophy in that hospice that I worked at was if a patient wanted to talk to you, you stopped what you do, you talked to patients. Well, they all wanted to talk to me. They must have known I had some sort of insight, or because they'd ask me questions about dying. It's as if they knew. So while I was there, my job was to help develop a team of complementary therapists. So I did so, and in doing so, I learned some of the complementary therapies, and Reiki and angelic Reiki and angel therapy really appealed to me because of the experiences I had. So I learned that, and then I started teaching that, and that's when I started my business. So, I did that for many years before I became a mental wellness advocate and mentor. And in 2009 to 2010, I'd actually had a clinic in our local area where I'd teach people, and then we'd open it up to the public. They'd come and have some healings, they'd make a donation, and those donations would keep us self-funding. And we did this for about 3 years. It was really successful. It was a lovely community project. I had very clear guidance in meditation to stop doing what I was doing, to hand the baton on to the people who I'd taught, to let them get on with it, and for me to start writing books and sharing my knowledge in that sort of way. And it was such strong, it was so clear that's what I had to do. So one evening I got these teachers who I taught, and they were now teachers. I said, look, I'm being told I need to pass the baton on to you now, and that this is what I have to do. I have to go and write this book, and I have to do it. This is so clear, I have to do it. Well, they weren't happy with it. They turned. It was really bizarre. I thought they were lovely people, but they turned and they were, you can't leave us. They just didn't like the fact that I was saying, come on, you can do it now. I need to do this, because you don't die and come back to faff around at stuff. If you're given guidance to do something, you're going to do it. So I was shocked by the reaction of these people, really shocked. And when I got home, I walked in. I was shaking because they were just vile. They were just so horrible. And my husband thought I'd had an accident. He actually went and got me a small brat. It wasn't even Christmas. So I told him what's happened. He went, Al, you've outgrown them now. You need to do what you need to do. So I went in my little treatment room where I'd worked from, and I sat down and meditated. And Jesus came through in my meditation, and he said, forgive them, they know not what they do. And he said, I'm going to mentor you for the next 3 days to help you on your next stage. We even set a space that's in the table. And I just sat with him for 3 days and was given really clear guidance on what to do. And he gave me a beautiful channeled message, actually, that I did share in Awarded by Angels, my first book. I wasn't sure whether to share it in case people thought I'd think, who does she think she is? But I thought, you know what? I mean, truth, if people don't believe it, that's their issue, not mine. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and helped me write Awarded by Angels, and this Bringing You Back to You, the second book. He helped me write that. So I've got a lot of love and respect and gratitude for Jesus as a man that walks the earth and helps people like us.
Did you see him or just hear him?
I heard him, but I saw him in my mind's eye. And it, in my mind's eye, he wasn't at all as I've seen him in pictures. His nose is very wonky for a start. I don't mean to be offensive, but I didn't find him as attractive in my third as I did in the pictures. But that didn't matter, because his whole energy is just beautiful. So, you shine beauty from the inside out, don't you? It was just his manner and his words and his patience and his calmness. And when he said to me, forgive them, they know not what they do, I forgave them in that instant. You know what? He's right. I didn't mean to be spiteful and nasty. I triggered them because I was leaving them. Could have been an abandonment issue. Who knows? So that helped me enormously.
Have you ever asked Jesus or Sarah, what is the purpose of coming here? Like, why do we come here and what are we doing?
Oh, I ask it all the time. So my team are called the Grand Collective of Light, team and they started to come towards and help me in lockdown. In lockdown, I did daily, I think it was mostly daily, I did daily lives on Facebook just to share some guidance and just to try and help people have a bit of distraction. I was so focused, it got me all locked down, and I was given very clear guidance and stuff. See, so yeah, I ask questions like that all the time. And we are here to be love in different forms. So we are here to experience love, to love even more. And you and I both know, you said you're married, and please, hopefully it's a loving marriage. I know mine is. But I've certainly found in my journey of love and being in a loving relationship with someone, that when you love someone, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to love even more. And it's so, so scary. And I often will say this to my clients if I'm working with someone who's going through loss of a relationship and they're scared of going into another relationship. I often say, you need to allow yourself to be vulnerable to experience that pure joy of love. And so, yeah, in different forms. So, for example, I've got a real strong belief that if I'm doing a job that I hate or I loathe, that isn't my job. That's someone else. Someone out there would love that job. So it's not my job to have. So I have to let go of that job. So that's the typical way. But when I, for example, I've just finished working with a most amazing, she doesn't realise she's as amazing as she is, but she is. I've just finished working with an amazing lady from Scotland. And I started working with her around Christmas time, and we've just completed. And she was in a very, very, very dark place. Oh, it's scarily dark place at that time. But now she's shiny and smiley and sparkly, and she's just gone on holiday by herself in Europe somewhere. And so we sort of put the session to a close on Friday. And I said to her, it's brought me so much joy being part of your journey. Now, that joy has come about me doing something that I love. But also, when you love something so much, you open the doors to more guidance and more help. Because I know when I'm working one-to-one with someone who's going through a life challenge, sometimes I'll ask them a question that's so left ball. That hasn't come from my mind and my thoughts. But that question will unlock a whole load of stuff that will help them heal or help them move on. And then you become even better because you trust the process. So I really believe we're here to do stuff that we love, because when we're doing something that we love, we shine even more. And when we shine even more, we inspire more, we trigger more as well. But the ones that we inspire them to do something they love. And then they'll inspire someone else and they'll trigger someone else. But maybe that triggered person might then think, I'm going to start to get some help to stop being triggered. And then the hurt become healed, and the healed become the teachers.
Can you give us just a little sample of Jesus's message for humanity?
You're not alone on the mountaintop, but close to the heart that never stops. Remember, then this is a bit that I often forget, and I should know this off by heart the amount of times I said it. Remember, open your heart and worship him now. That was the first one. Let me just tell you a story about this. I'm just seeing things. So I started channeling this message around that 2005. I did an angel therapy course for about a whole week, and part of that course we went to Stonehenge at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I really didn't want to go because 5 o'clock felt too early for me, so I was a bit grumpy. And as I leant on a stone, that's when I started to channel words and write words down. And then when I wrote that book 4 or 5 years later, 2009, 2010, that's when the channel messages come from Jesus. So what he also talked about, I wish I had a copy of Awarded by Angels with me and I could read it, but I haven't. What he talked about was there are lonely people out there, and that if you're a lonely person, you must put your arms out and reach out to another and tell them that you're lonely, as hard as that is. And that is how you'll stop loneliness. But I'm here now to be authentic, is true to yourself and true to love, whatever love is, and however love shows up in your life. So right now, me being incredibly open and honest, I have never been this open in any interview before, Jeff. I hope I'm not going to get slammed for this, but it feels right, it feels safe, and I'm obviously guided to do it, so I'm going to do it. And I think that's what having a beautiful team and Jesus on your team helps you with, because he's saying that it's important to speak truth, it's important to be truth, and to live your life in truth. And that he said to me as well that you're one of the chosen ones, and I didn't like that because I felt very uncomfortable with that. And so I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, I call that people who have died and come back, because you have an experience of dying and coming back, and you have he's telling me now, you have a growing compassion. So your compassion is able to grow more and more, because you've had that beautiful experience of dying, then coming back, you've had a rebirth, a dying and a rebirth, and then you have to get used to being the new person you are. And you're saying cherish those moments, and cherish those moments of when you feel and hear and sense pure love in all of its forms. And when you have those moments, they are those moments when you know you are being true service to another. And using that example as that young lady I finished working with on Friday, that was a really good example of that. Very moving, very love induced and love filled, and also very earthy. I hope I've explained that appropriately.
I think so.
I hope so.
For people out there who are grieving over the loss of loved ones, do you have any advice that you can share with them?
Absolutely. And I lost my dad last June. So I'm only just coming out of that dark place. So I honestly, I know my grief isn't like your grief or anyone else's grief, but what I can say to you, and this is because I absolutely know this, that when your loved ones pass, they go to a much better place. They're not on their own. They're surrounded by love and help. And all I can say to you, since my dad passed last year, he died of dementia, my dad did. I feel closer to him now than in those final stages of dementia, because I hear him clear as anything. And I listen to his guidance and his advice as well. So if you're watching this and you've lost someone, the pain is raw. I absolutely know it, but put your hand on your heart. Talk to your loved ones, tell them how much you miss them, asking them to make themselves shown in a way that doesn't scare you, whether it be through, a sign such as a robin. So, for example, the night after my dad passed, my older son was living with us, and he'd been off this brilliant job. And we were so pleased because he loved his granddad so much. So he said, Mum, Dad, I'm going to take you out for a meal. And we went to this barbecue type place. Well, one of my nephews called my dad the barbecue king of the barbecues, because he was brilliant at barbecue. So we were sitting there deciding what we were ordering, and we're all happy for Sam and his job, but we were also sad because my dad passed. And then my son said to me, he said, Mum, look at that sign above you. And there was literally a sign above me saying King of the Barbecues. So my dad was with us, literally in a sign, as we'd been asking for a sign. So look out for the signs. But also, I don't know if people are aware of it. If you're going through loss, please do get the help of a soul doula. If someone who you love is dying now, or reach out to a hospice or a grief counsellor, someone who knows what you're going through, because grief is different for everybody, and there's no time. By 6 weeks, you shouldn't be feeling this way. By 6 months, you'll feel how you feel at whatever time and whatever's right for you. But energy is energy, and we lose our physical body, but you don't lose memory of that person. We're energy. We don't stop.
Alison, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you
Okay.
open to that?
Absolutely.
How should they reach you?
They could reach my email, which is alisonward555@gmail.com. Or I am trying to build up my Instagram, which is at Alison Ward Mentor. They could message me through that. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want us to know about?
Yes, I am 59 years old on Tuesday. So I'm going to be the big 60 the following year. So I'm actually going to be a little bit selfish and working on myself for the next year. Because I feel I deserve it. So I've been trying to get fitter and stronger. I've started doing strengths. So I'm my project at the moment, probably for the first time in the whole of my life, where I feel I've earned the badge. So that's what I'm doing for the next 12 months, as well as doing this work, of course. I'm not stopping.
Well, you've written many books. Do you have another one coming out?
Well, Mental Health is the next book that's coming out, but I feel there is another book, but I'm not quite sure what it is yet, but no doubt I'll be showing that. I do feel there's one more book left in me, so I'll wait to be guided as to what that will be.
Before we finish up, can you give us one last positive message?
When you decide to be you, beautiful, glorious you step into a power that is infinite, and that is the power of love. So you have nothing to lose. Just be you, glorious you, and know that you will be guided and supported from this day forwards. There will be people that will not like you shining so bright. All you need to do is shine your light bright so much that they need their glasses. That is exactly how I've tried to live my life.
Alison, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.